Equilibrium in a competitive market occurs when the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied at the intersection of the demand curve and the supply curve. At this intersection point, marginal social benefit on the demand curve equals marginal social cost on the supply curve. This equality is the condition for allocative efficiency. So in equilibrium, a competitive market achieves allocative efficiency, as it is shown in the figure. The figure also shows the consumer surplus and producer surplus. The sum of consumer surplus and the producer surplus is called total surplus. When the efficient quantity is produced, total surplus is maximized. Buyers and sellers, acting in their self-interest, end up promoting the social interest. The marginal benefit to the entire society is the marginal social benefit curve, MSB. If all the benefit from consuming a good go to its consumers, the market demand curve is the same as the MSB curve. The marginal cost to the entire society is the marginal social cost curve, MSC. If all the cost of producing a good are paid by the producer, the marginal supply curve is the same as the MSC curve. When the production is less than the equilibrium quantity, MSB is greater than MSC. When production is greater than the equilibrium quantity, MSC is greater than MSB. When production is equal to the equilibrium quantity, MSC equals to MSB. Resources are used efficiently when marginal social benefit equals marginal social cost. When the efficient quantity is produced, total surplus, the sum of consumer surplus and the producer surplus, is maximized. Adam Smith's invisible hand idea in The Wars of Nations implied that competitive markets send resources to their highest valued use in the society. Consumers and producers pursue their own self-interest and interact in markets. Market transactions generate an efficient, highest valued use of resources. However, markets do not always achieve an efficient outcome. We call a situation in which a market delivers an inefficient outcome one of market failure. Market failure can occur because too little of an item is produced, underproduction, or too much is produced, overproduction. We will describe these two market failure outcomes and then see why they arise. Underproduction. Assume the efficient quantity is 10,000 pieces a day. If production is restricted to 5,000 pieces a day, there is underproduction, and the quantity is inefficient. A deadweight loss equals the decrease in the total surplus, the gray triangle. This loss is a social loss. Overproduction. Again, the efficient quantity is 10,000 pieces a day. If production is expanded to 15,000 pieces a day, a deadweight loss arises from overproduction. This loss is a social loss. In competitive markets, underproduction or overproduction arise when there are price and quantity regulations, taxes and subsidies, externalities, public goods and common resources, monopoly, and high transaction costs. Price regulations sometimes put a block on the price adjustments and lead to underproduction. Quantity regulations that limit the amount that a farm is permitted to produce also lead to underproduction. Taxes increase the price paid by buyers and lower the prices received by sellers. So taxes decrease the quantity produced and lead to underproduction. Subsidies lower the prices paid by buyers and increase the prices received by sellers. So subsidies increase the quantity produced and lead to overproduction. An externality is a cost or benefit that affects someone other than the seller or the buyer of a good. For example, electricity utility creates an external cost by burning coal that creates acid rain. The utility doesn't consider this cost when it chooses the quantity of power to produce. Overproduction results. An apartment owner would provide an external benefit if she installed a smoke detector, but she doesn't consider her neighbor's marginal benefit and decided not to install a smoke detector. This result is underproduction. A public good benefits everyone, and no one can be excluded from its benefit. It is everyone's self-interest to avoid paying for a public good, called the free rider problem, which leads to underproduction. A common resource is owned by no one, but can be used by everyone. It is in everyone's self-interest to ignore the cost of their own use of a common resource that fall on others, called tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of commons leads to overproduction. A monopoly is a firm that is the sole provider of a good or service. The self-interest of a monopoly is to maximize its profit. To do so, a monopoly sets a price to achieve its self-interest goal. As a result, a monopoly produces too little and underproduction results. Transaction costs are the opportunity cost of making trades in the market. To use the market price as the allocator of scarce resources, it must be worth bearing the opportunity cost of establishing a market. Some markets are just too costly to operate. When transaction costs are high, the market might underproduce. You now know the conditions under which resources allocation is efficient. You have seen how a competitive market can be efficient, and you have seen some obstacles to efficiency. This is the end of session 3.